Bueno, mi nombre es Maricarmen Rodríguez. Yo soy egresada de Trainee English. Maricarmen Rodríguez, I'm teacher here in the Language Center. I'm giving English and French. I'm also speaking Italian. I finished my career 1 year ago in that. Where else I have the opportunity to work with different kind of students, especially adults. I don't like children, but I have had the opportunity to work with children. Well, in my experience, it's not that much compared with our teachers, but I try. Yeah. And what else? I like to learn other language because I love to teach languages, especially. And I look for the opportunity to work here in Uni, so thank God I have the opportunity finally. Well, that's what I'm doing right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rodriguez, and well, I have been teaching here in Filosofía y Letras and Ciencias del Lenguaje for about 5 years. And I have also worked in other schools, private, like the UDM, Instituto Lawrence, Tecnogenio, and I have had the chance to work with different kind of levels and students. I'm not the one for children either, but I have had experience doing, and of course that helps us to have like a wider view of what teaching English as a second language will be. And well, basically, that would be it.
Well, my name is Gabriela Flores. I'm studying for being an English teacher, and now I'm being working in Centro de Idiomas. I'm Chinese teacher, and I have experience working as Chinese teacher like for 5 years. I have been working with children, with teenagers, and with adults. And I would like to be working here as teacher in English, as English teacher, I'm sorry. And that's it.
Okay, we're going to read the vignette, and from that case, we're going to start discussing about the best ways to teach a second or a third language, okay? Let's see. Marce, can you read the vignette, please?
Laura had never studied English formally before she started college. All the experience she had with the language came from the regular curricular English classes included in her high school program. These lessons were taken 3 times a week in 45-minute periods. She loved the language, but she always felt she had not learned enough. Nevertheless, she loves music in English, especially indie bands and singers such as Kate Nash. She downloads the lyrics for the songs and sings along. That has helped her improve her vocabulary and her pronunciation. When she started college, she finally had formal English classes every day. These classes are in an EFL format and are supposed to be managed in English all the time. However, sometimes both the teacher and the students use Spanish. Laura loves this class because the teacher brings lots of interesting and dynamic activities and very catchy materials, and she feels like she learns a lot every day. What she does not like a lot is that they do a lot of grammar exercises, and she has to memorize rules and exceptions to solve all the pages in the book. Sometimes Laura wishes she could be in a class like the one her cousin Raúl takes in Texas, where he lives. He says he's in a dual language class. He has American and Latino classmates, and they started taking only part of the class in English, but they have increased the amount of time and contents covered in it, and now in the 7th grade they do it all in English, and he really speaks the language very well.
Thank you, Marce. Okay, so the point is to discuss what practices you consider to be the best to learn a second or a third language. You can use your experience as teachers or your experience as learners of second and third languages. Okay? Who would like to start? Okay.
I think, well, there it says that dynamic classes, she likes that kind of classes. I think so that we have to be very dynamic because we have, well, you already know that we have different kind of students. And most of them, they love to be in a dynamic class. Not only in a class where the teacher is just with the book and page 45, page that, exercise B, no, because they get bored very easily. So I think we have to be very dynamic. I try, in that case, I try to prepare my classes, trying to have like, I don't know, new ideas, fresh ideas for them. Not just the dynamic, normal, standard classes, like try to find other material, non-normal material to design a class. Because in this way, the student can get better the topic, but also he's enjoying the class. And at the same time, he share ideas. He can share ideas with the partners. And that's the point that's very important, that we have to cheer them up to be like in communication, in a constant communication with their partners, not just with the teacher. So I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think that, well, as Mari Carmen was saying, dynamic and exciting material and let's not say entertaining classes, because then it can be misunderstood, like we are the clowns of the class. But of course, I believe that the teacher attitude towards the class like needs to be positive, and that she transmit or he transmit that attitude to the students. Like, if the teacher loves what she does, then the students will enjoy also the class, because that would be like a good learning environment. And I think that it will depend, the ESL or EFL or content classes, it will depend on the objective the students have. So we can have dynamics and we can have games and interactive activities, but also like in the case they said like she doesn't like the grammar exercises and like those boring things that we can find in the language and learning a language. However, sometimes it depends on the approach we use them, but depending on the kind of students we are going to teach. For example, here in where we have the EFL classes first, second, third semester, like the approach, even though it's an EFL class, an English class, the approach will be different, because we are teaching English to future English teachers that of course they need to enjoy the language, but they need to learn the language.
Yes.
And they need to learn the rules. And they need to learn the grammar perfectly, because if they don't understand them, they won't be able to explain it in an appropriate way. So I think that depending on the context and depending on the objectives and the needs the students have for learning English as a second language or as a foreign language, that will be how we need to approach the class. Of course, I believe that always taking into account the good environment, learning environment, the attitude towards the language and all these things, so we can make it better. And of course, well, there the situation also mentioned it in the Texas University. Probably we are not very familiar with that dual learning approach, but I believe that, for example, you as students in Philosophy Letras, and this is like an example that I would give to my students, at the beginning probably you have experienced English before, you have studied, and probably you arrive here either knowing some or a lot of the English language, and some of you were not in a good level, but at the time you arrive here, even if you had studied English, you realize that you didn't know the language. You say like, I spent 5 years studying English, and then I arrived here to third semester, and I realized that I don't know anything, because it happened to me when I was a student also here. But probably if you have seen how you have improved since third semester to now, with the help of the content classes you have had in English and being exposed to English language like daily with your teachers and everything, by receiving that input, I think that your English has improved, even though you haven't continued taking English classes as EFL. So the content in English and the exposure to the English language help you to develop the language anyway.
Thank you very much. Gabi?
Well, I want to share my experience when I was a student and then as teacher, but with a third language. When I was studying Chinese, I was studying here in Mexico in a private school, and when I was learning, my teacher used to teach us with a book, and it was just, okay, let's see the book, and we're going to discuss what we're reading, and we were talking in Spanish, and then Chinese, and Spanish, and then Chinese. And that teacher doesn't give us to listen music or to have more conversations between the students. Then after 3 years, I went to China, and I was studying Chinese with a lot of foreign students. And when we were there, all the students, I was just the only one that was speaking Spanish, and the other ones, just few of them talk English. And the teacher just speak Chinese. The teacher was native teacher, and she or he doesn't understand anything about talking English or another language. So if you ask him something, he doesn't understand. You have to try to speak as you can in Chinese. And we were having classes as grammar, vocabulary, reading, speaking, and listening. We were practicing all of that subjects and trying to learn those 4 subjects in one day. And I was taking classes from Monday to Friday, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Sorry. And then when I was in China, as the teacher Nayeli mentioned before, I realized that when I was learning Chinese, it doesn't have anything to do when I was in China. I cannot have a conversation with a Chinese people. And I can just understand 4 or 5 words. When they talk to me, I just understand 4 words. And I couldn't be able to express myself for them to understand me. And when it was passing the time, I was watching TV, and month by month I was learning more, and I also can be able to speak or say more phrases in Chinese. And then when I arrived here, I already know more than I learned here. I learned those 2 years that I was learning here Chinese. When I was in China, just in 1 year, I learned that. I rehearsed that all that I just learned, and learn more, but I learn more like faster. And if it was 2 years, I can say that I learned more than 2 years studying here in Mexico. Then when I'm here and I want to teach to my students, I try to make the classes more interesting, because here all the students want to speak in Spanish. And if I just speak in Chinese, some of them complain, or they want to understand everything, and so I try to speak a little bit Spanish and I speak Chinese. And most of the time I try to speak in Chinese, then the explanations I try to give them in Spanish, and then explain them in Chinese. And I try to put them music for them to listen, videos, and I try for them to make a lot of conversations for them to practice the language, because if they don't practice these conversations, they always talking in Spanish, and they don't learn. And I try to make a lot of dictations in characters, and sometimes I try to bring the characters and I paste them in the whiteboard, and then I paste all the characters. Okay, I say, well, you're going to have dictation, and the words are over here, so you have to learn or identify which characters are here, and you have to write them.
Okay.
And this way, it is easier for them to try to write these characters and identify them.
That's sorry about the point that the teacher is saying, that we have to help the students to speak. The problem is that they don't want to speak. When they are having conversations that you are preparing your material or something, or you are in the computer, so for this student, for us, it's like, okay, free time, so let's speak. And they start to speak in Spanish. Y le dije, y luego me llamó. And you start to listen, and you say, okay, so let's talk about, okay, the book talks about gold fever. Do you remember the unit in language and in English? Gold fever. What do you know about gold fever? What do you know? No, I mean, yeah, nothing. And Okay, so you want to talk to me, yeah? What do you know or what do you imagine that is the meaning of that? Pues yo pienso, no, in English. So no, they don't want to. So that's true. We have to give them the opportunity to speak, but also it depends, as teacher Nayeli says, on their objects, of their goals. If they want to talk, they really want to learn to talk, they will be with you. But if they are there because they have to, because in FACPIA they are asked to have English, or because their parents want to, they will be just, for them, you are the one that has to speak. You are the one, because you are the teacher.
And
So,
until they face the situation,
yeah.
like, you have to, because there's no other way, then that will be the moment in which they will start producing. But if that's not part of their objective, it is like with no sense what you're telling them.
They can be in the in the final semester. It's the only level that you have the opportunity to speak because you are finishing the English, because you are getting good grades. So that's why you can, advance. But they don't want to speak. So at the end, you as a teacher, you can feel like bad, not sure, because you are getting a grade of 90, 95, but you are not sure that they can speak. And at the end, this is about having conversations. Most of them, they don't want to learn English or French or Italian or Chinese because they want to be teachers. No, they want to speak it because they need it for something. A personal goal or a professional goal, but they need it. So they are not so interested in grammar. That's why. So they don't care. They just want to know how to use it.
Yeah.
They don't want to explain it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. In your experience as teachers, which methodology do you consider more effective for teaching? What context you consider more effective? Not the methodology, the context. An EFL context, a bilingual context, a content context, or an immersion context? Which one do you think it's better?
Well, it's because it depends. Like, for example, it happened to me also when I was learning Italian, and I had the opportunity to go for 1 month to Italy. So I have been studying here for 5 semesters on Saturday classes, and I went with a friend, and she hadn't studied Italian at all. So we were taking some Italian courses there, and with other different people from around the world. And my friend learned in 1 month what I learned in 1.5 years from Italian. So, of course, that being immersed in the culture, in the language, in everything, like, gives you more opportunities to express or to learn the language.
Yeah.
However, well, not everybody has the opportunity to be immersed. So I believe that, for example, I'm not agreed that much with bilingual, or, well, they don't call it bilingual, but bicultural schools in which they said, okay, like 80% English and 20% Spanish. Because unfortunately, well, they will be able to learn the language, the English language, and some of them are like really good. But what happens with the native language?
Yeah.
That they are supposed to learn, that in this case is Spanish. So their lack of language in Spanish is like a lot, and they are able to speak in English very fluently and everything, but then when you give them some tasks in Spanish, they won't be able to do them. Or when they move from that bicultural school to a normal school, and all their context
Changes.
and math concepts are in English and science and physics, and they have to take a physics class in Spanish, so everything becomes a chaos to them. So I believe that depends on the purpose of what you want to achieve.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with teacher Nayeli because, for example, with French, that I have experience with that, I always said to my students, we cannot go to France, maybe because we don't have the possibility, in talking about money, of course, or time. So, for me, the book that is used here in Novice Center, that is Alter Ego, is a kind of problematic because it's very cultural. And for me, well, I'm not native, of course. I know that I look bad. I'm not native. So I always said, we cannot go, but at least we can know a little about the culture. How? I look for videos, I look for information. I mean, trying to be immersed in the culture, because it's very problematic, it's very difficult to be there. I mean, they don't have time, they don't have the money, or they don't want to. But the book is asking for the explanation of a cultural thing. So I try to look for videos and at least share with them the idea more or less of the culture. For example, that I remember that we were checking the invitations and events and everything, and we have like a wedding. And I was, imagine a wedding in France. So I looked for a video to show how it's a wedding. And it's the same in Mexico. But at least they realize that, okay, it's true, it's the same. So yeah, that's true. Immersion is very important, of course. It's part of the culture, it's part of the language. And also, for example, Islam language. In the book, most of the times you cannot see like words that are very used in the country, because they are considered like bad use of the English, but they are used. I mean, the truth is that it's common. So we have to help them to be immersed at least in that way. And a little, yes. Why? Because then they realize they go to the United States or France or Italy or China, and they realize that I don't know about the culture.
Yes.
And they are telling me this, and you are like, okay, so she or he's telling me something good, and it's the opposite, because they don't know the truth. I mean, what is behind that word? So that's why, yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yes, I'm also agree with immersion, because when you're in another country, you're learning the culture. And when you learn the culture, you're forced to try to do what they are doing, to speak like them, And when you're in classes, as I just mentioned, you cannot be speaking in Spanish because with whom are you going to speak? And they are going to understand, no, you think maybe that some Brazilian people will speak Spanish, but no, he or she doesn't understand anything. And when you're there, you're going to the store, or you're walking in the street, and you have to try to make an effort to speak in the language you're learning. And when you want to talk with your classmate, you also have to try to speak in Chinese, and you have no choice. And when you're learning that language, there's going to be a moment that you're going to be thinking in that language. And when you want to try to speak your native language, maybe you're getting a little bit confused, but it can pass. And when you're here and you're learning as bilingual or another methodology, you have just the idea. When you're learning, you have the idea of the language, but not learning the whole language that it has to be. So I also try to bring some pictures and videos, and when you experience being in another country, you're able to explain the students about the culture. And in China, about the weddings, they use a special dress and a Chinese dress, and they use different flowers, and it is a different culture. And nowadays they are just changing, and if they want, they use two costumes. They use the one that we use here, an international with black and white dress, and over there they used to dress in red color and Chinese dress. And you can explain your students as you were experiencing over there.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions or comments? Maybe something that you recall from your own experience as learning a second or a third language, and the type of situation you were in? How effective you consider was? Anybody? No? Arturo?
When she mentions that you're in a class and you have your plan, and you have what are you going to do in your head, like I'm going to give them this scenario, this kind of role play to help them to practice what we're seeing in class, and you kind of a lot of your class, or the time you thought you were going to spend was on this activity, on this bunch of activities, and you, okay, let's pretend like you are a salesman, you are someone who wants to buy something. Now, I want you to, using the example, even you write them down, the key words or sentences, try to make a little conversation.
And you ask, do you understand? Yes!
Yes. Yeah, I know. ¿Cómo le hacemos?
Sí, sí. Yeah.
Eso es algo del pizarrón.
In Spanish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. Hi, how are you?
My name
Yeah.
For first you need to introduce yourself. You need to act as it was a real situation. Imagine like you're going outside here right now, like with your friends, something like that. You try to give them all the clues that you can, and es que no sé cómo decirlo.
That's very typical.
And so how do you work around that? I mean,
You have to supervise their work, of course. I mean, if you ask them for a task, for example, the conversation, let's prepare a conversation, please. Make teams of 2 or 3. Okay. And they start talking about it last weekend.
yeah.
And they continue since the beginning. And then if they see the teacher just like this on the desk, of course they will be taking like 15 minutes in activity that is designed for 5. Of course, because they see that the teacher is not ignoring the students, but the teacher is not there. It's checking, exactly. So they need that. If you walk around and you're like, hey, come on, do you have a problem? Do you have a question? In that case, you can solve questions like that. Like, how do you say esto? Ah, okay, so I help you. But it's about to be with them all the time, not let them alone. Because we work students, all of us, and we are like that.
Yes.
So we have to recognize that. But once that we are teachers, it's very different. Because we have certain objectives, certain goals that the school is asking for.
We have a time limit.
Exactly, we have a time. So as you said, I prepare the class, and I have 3 activities, and at the end of the class, it results that I did just 1. Because of the time, because of the kind of students that I have. So we have to be prepared. How can you save time, or how can you be sure that they are working, maybe like walking around, helping them? Not in the sense that I'm strict. I need you to do this because I said that you have to do it. No, because I need to help you, and you need my help, of course.
Yes. A moment ago, Ms. Garza was saying that bilingual education sometimes is not as effective because children might lose some of their skills in the first language. We have 2 classmates here who have experienced bilingual education, Novice and Claudia. What do you think about that? What was your experience? Do you think you lost some of your Spanish?
No, but sometimes I overlap words in English and in Spanish in normal conversations.
Okay.
Because I learned English since I was in kindergarten, and when I went to college here, I was really surprised because I finally realized that I didn't know a lot of grammar, that I spoke the English, but I didn't realize the grammar or all that technique behind the language. So I was really surprised with all the classes that I had here. And at the same time, when I was outside and like with my family, I overlap some sentences with the Spanish or English. For example, I talked with my dad and I was like, sí, papá. Era como que hacíamos feedback. Es que no sé cómo se dice en español, así de que, ¿cómo se dice? Es como que it was overwhelming, pero no sé cómo decirlo en español. Es así a veces, well, unconsciously I speak Spanish and English like Spanglish. So that's a problem that I have, and sometimes I had it nowadays. And also with some friends that they learned English since they were little also. They had the same problem as me, and we communicate that way.
Spanglish.
in Spanish, yes. So it's kind of um, a problem, and sometimes it is not a problem.
Okay.
And I use that for some students when I was in my social work and at high school. There were a lot of students that didn't understood their English class. They were in first semester or second semester, and they were like, because the teacher tells us everything in Spanish, but we don't understand the book. The book is in English. Everything is in English, but we don't understand the book, and she tells everything in Spanish. And they wanted to have classes with Spanish, but also with English. And so I had to explain some students first level, the hour, and the present simple, and well, some
Basic stuff.
basic stuff. But they understood because I explained it in Spanish, but I made them practice the English.
Okay. Claudia, can you tell us about your experience as a student in a bilingual situation? Do you think it would help you? Was your Spanish maintained, or did it suffer some attrition? What do you think?
I think that my Spanish suffered
Okay.
because I had the classes on 8 a.m. until 3, and it was English. My classes on English was 8 to 12:30 or 1, and the rest was in Spanish.
Okay.
So
The case that you were mentioning, Nayeli.
Yes. So I think that, as they mentioned, in the books talk about all the culture that have in USA, and there were some exercise that we just answer it, but we don't. Well, we understood, but we can put it in practice here because we don't have that culture. And in Spanish, I have a little problems with los acentos,
Okay.
because I wrote everything in English
Without accents.
and in Spanish I wrote without
Accents.
yes, with an accent, and I think that's my problem.
Okay.
That part suffer.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Okay. Anybody else who wants to comment anything? No? You're doing just what Arturo said at the beginning?
I have another question. This one related to the lack of motivation or interest in your students. Well, for example, I'm going to assume that most of the students that are right now in the language center, they are because they want to improve, they want to learn their English. Well, that's why I say I'm going to assume. I'm trying to be positive.
In a perfect world. Yeah.
In a perfect world. So, what do you do, or how do you, how much effort can you put into a bunch of students that lack the motivation or interest? Like, you can give them a lot of dynamic activities, videos, material, put a lot of effort in your work, but how much can a teacher said, okay, I try. I'm going to just give them what they want, just the basic, like the book and their exams, their grading.
They just want the grade.
Yeah, they just want the grade. So,
It is
in what moment?
very, very difficult, Arturo, to deal with a group of students who are not motivated. I think it is one of the most difficult challenges that a teacher can have, to be working with a group of students who are not motivated. And you can find them everywhere, and not only in EFL classes, even here in Philosophy Letras, they are becoming teachers and they are not motivated, not even to learn the language they are going to teach. So I think that for example, it happens once to me in this school. I was teaching English, and we had the classes at 7 a.m. in the morning. And I arrived with all my positive attitudes and the dynamics, and then I asked questions to my students, and then they were like, they were just looking at each other. And I know that some of them, they knew English, most of them, but they didn't want to speak. And they worked with their faces, and they worked with the attitude. And then there is a moment that, as Arturo said, you try so much that there is one moment in which you say, okay, that's all. That's all. That's enough. So if you don't want to learn, I'm here to help you. I'm here to give you the tools that you need, but I can do any more if you don't give your 50% or your 100% in my 100%.
Yeah.
So also, for example, at UVM, I work in the mornings at the UVM. And the students have to take English like a curriculum class. And most of them, they are not interested in learning English, and they are more worried about their careers. But what is the problem? That if they don't pass the TOEFL at the end of their fifth level, they don't get the title. And not even that motivates them. So I was talking precisely today with some of my students, and I tell them, tell me what you want me to do. Because I come here, I tell you that I will explain you, and then I ask you if you have any questions, and you are like, no, everything is correct, and everything, we understand it. And at the end of the trancasos, right? Like at the end of the exam or at the end of the course, we cannot reach the objective because you never told me that you were lacking some of the information. So I think that the best way to approach it is, one, to be honest with your students, to tell them that you are there to help them, but that you also need their commitment. And if they are not willing to give their effort in the class, well, there is nothing you can do for them.
Yeah.
So if they don't give their percentage. And to be honest and to be demanding in the way like, okay, here we are, let's try to learn whatever it is possible. And today happened something funny because probably they won't learn anything. I asked them, we were checking compound nouns, compound words. And so I asked them, do you know what a compound word is? And then they started, yes, it's when we have like some adjectives and so on. And then I told them, no, that won't be a compound noun. So I asked them, do you know what grapefruit is? And then they started, fruta de uva, uva fruta. And then I asked them like, no, that is a compound word, but it doesn't mean like their individual meanings. And so one person was saying, it's toronja, teacher. And I said, yes, it's toronja. And then everybody was like, really, teacher? They are in 5th level, the last level of English. And then I said, really? And then one student even looked in the dictionary because he didn't believe it. And then, really, teacher, it is toronja. And then I said, okay, so if you are in the United States and you ask for a grapefruit juice, they are not going to give you fruta de uva, right? So they are going to give you toronja. And then I said, and then I asked them, okay, so how do you say, for example, watermelon? It's also a compound word. What does watermelon mean? Sandia. And how do you say agua de melon? And then they started, see, watermelon de sandia, how do you say agua de melon? Melon water. So watermelon water and melon water will be different things. And they will say like, and I asked them, they were like really excited with those, we were checking like TOEFL skills and things like that. And then they were like, and I told them, I'm sure that I will ask you what grapefruit is in 10 years from now, and you will remember. You won't remember anything about what I said about the TOEFL skills and the passive voice and everything that we did. But so I think that is part of motivating them. So sometimes you give them like little things, little information, interesting facts about the language or about the culture, and that's the moment in which you can catch their attention, and that's your only opportunity to make them learn something.
Yes.
At least only one word or at least only one phrase, but you know that they will remember it forever.
Yes.
They love phrases. That's true. What teacher Nayeli is saying. I have that exactly. You described perfectly my situation because I have a group at 4 p.m. that is French second level, and I have 34 students, and 26, 27 they are from FAPIA. Yeah. So they are there because they need other language besides English. Every time that I ask for homework guys, let's check homework, and as she's saying, like, with all your attitude, you're great, yeah, you feel good, of course not, but you have to transmit that feeling, yeah. You have to be positive, and they're like, tenemos tarea, había tarea, no me dijiste. So that kind of, they don't have motivation. The only one is to have the final note, to go to FACPIA and say, I have French. That's all. For us, it's a problem because I can prepare a lot of things, even PowerPoint presentations, spreadsheet, whatever, and balloons, everything. But if you don't have your students in the same channel with you, trying to achieve the same things that you want to achieve, they are just doing things because they need it. And I agree with that. If you give them something particular, like a fact or a phrase that they didn't know, they will pay attention. At least those 5-10 minutes of the class. But they will learn something. So at the end of the 11, they can say, with teacher Nayeli, with teacher Gary, with teacher Mari Carmen, I learned this and this and this. And I remember that phrase. Yeah. And I remember they watch a movie and they will say, oh, I remember that I checked that phrase when I was in 4th level in this and this.
Yeah.
So I agree with that. Also.
Okay,
You have to give
thank
them
you.
something.
We have 1 minute for each of you for closing comments. Okay, what would you like to tell? What advice would you give our students, your classmates? What would you tell them to make the most out of their profession?
Well, I will tell you that to be a good teacher, just try to make your class interesting, try to make all the students participate, try to make them to do teams, but you have to try that make the student that doesn't know another student join them to work together, and that way they're going to be avoid talking in Spanish or talking about their situations in their daily life, and they will be trying to work in that language you're teaching them.
Thank you.
Well, I
Miss
have
Garza?
some thoughts.
Okay.
Well, some tips. Like the first one, it will be, as I told you, be always positive and transmit a good attitude whenever you work. So that's like the worst teacher is the one that arrives with his face like, I don't want to be here. Doesn't matter, like Mari Carmen said, that you are thinking something else, but we teachers, we need to learn to be actors.
Yes.
Okay, so always with a good face and good attitude. Always prepare yourself. This is something that I have told you when I went to teach. Always prepare yourself. Always be update of what is going on in teaching. Try to always improve yourself. Also, be honest. Always be honest with your students and tell them, like, you are not the walking dictionary, you are not the encyclopedia, you are not. So that Wikipedia. So you be honest with them and tell them, I'm not the one that knows everything, but I will try to help you and I will give you the information as soon as I check it. So that can make like the students feel comfortable and they don't get mad if you don't know something, or they don't get disappointed also. So, and also always, the final tip will be, always be organized. Organized and plan what you do, because that's like the best way in which you can be successful in one of your classes.
Thank you.
So you can have a lot of kind of students, the students that they want to participate, the students that are always anxious because they want to say the answer, and also the kind of students that are still like this, and they don't know anything about your class. And then you ask, Carlos, what is the answer? Oh, what? So you have to learn to face those kind of situations, because you cannot be mad, as the teacher Angel is saying. I mean, sometimes. You cannot, yeah, but you cannot transmit the idea of I hate you guys. I mean, because the only answer that you can get of that is more resistance from your students. They will be worst with you. And the point here is at the end, well, we can be friends or as students, that's good, yeah, to know them. But not at the point that, hey teacher, I have a good relation with you, and it's just 69, 70, not in that sense. I mean, be very clear in that, okay, I can be your friend, I can be with you. If you need me as a teacher or as a friend, I'm here for you. If you want to share something, but not talking about grades, not talking about extra points, not in that sense. Why? Because if you had a good relation with them, then they will try to get something from that, yeah, an advantage from that. And then if you say, for example, hey, okay, so, but shh, it's a secret. Of course it's not a secret. And it's not good. It's not fair that you do that. You have to be very professional in that sense, very professional. Despite you are young, because most of the students at this age, and I remember that teacher Connie told us once when I was a student, she says, it's the only time that the age is going to be a problem for you. And I was, wait, you will see. When I started my first job, they were like, you're very young, so blah, blah. So they ignore me. For them, I was just a student there, or a new teacher. And I was a new teacher, but they ignore you because of the age. So now that you are young, you will have problems for that. And also, if you have adult students, I mean, adult like 30 years old, 40 years old, of course you will have to learn to handle these type of situations. Be positive, be very clear in this kind of relation that you want to have with your students. Try to integrate all of them, not just the ones that you already know that they want to participate and ignore the rest. The students that you say, Juanito is never participated, so I ignore him. I will not ask him. No, because the only thing that you can get from Juanito is like, okay, so you ignore me, I ignore you. So try to be positive in the sense that I want you all of you, you are important for me. All of you. Doesn't matter if you already know English, or if you are new, totally new, a true beginner here, or if you are a false beginner that is here because you are friends. So, I mean, try to make them feel as the same. All of you are the same. That's my advice.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Rodriguez, Ms. Garza, and Ms. Flores. Thank you, people. Okay, I know this is going to be really helpful for all of us. All your comments or your experience, your different types of experiences, because they are learning, they're in the way, and they're going to get lots of ideas from what you have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.